Hello YouTube, and welcome to this next video in our Axis and Allies 1914 tutorial series. We've been covering a lot of different topics in our last few videos. One topic that we have spent some time on is that of combat. For this video, we are going to spend some time focusing on a different aspect of combat, that of reinforcements. And then as we move on, we're going to transition from that over to a totally separate topic, that of neutrals. Activating, what are neutrals, the different kinds of neutrals, how do you activate them, what does all of that mean? And you'll see that I have a few pieces set up around the board here, and we're going to be using them to illustrate several different scenarios. So for scenario number one, I want to take a look at land reinforcements. So we know that when one country attacks another on land, the attacker moves their forces in, the attacker rolls, then the defender rolls, casualties are removed, and if both sides are still in the territory, then that territory is considered contested. No one gets the production for it, and both armies remain in that territory. So let's say, for our illustration, we're going to be talking about Germany and France here. And Germany goes before France, so we're going to say that Germany decided to attack Lorraine right there. And we won't roll dice and remove casualties. We'll just assume that for this scenario, both sides still have forces left there. So on France's turn, France can decide to reinforce it if it wants to. And what that means is if it has land units that are in range, like here in Burgundy or in Picardy up there, it can move them in. So we're going to go ahead and act as if France decided to do that. Now, we've got all those forces in that territory. France still has a decision to make. They can just move all those units in and then stop and say, we're going to basically reinforce our defensive trenches here, and we're not going to attack. Or they can say, we're going to move all these forces in, and now we think we're strong enough, we're going to assault the Germans. And then they can engage in an attack with all of their forces, both those that were there at the start of their turn, as well as these forces that they moved in there. Now let's say that they do decide to attack, and Germany has one guy left after both sides roll. Well, it's still contested, and that means on Germany's turn, if it has any units in range, it could move them in and then make the same decision. Does it want to move them in and just defend? Does it think that's the better tactical option? Or does it make sense, because of the forces coming in, to go and try to attack and kill some more French and try and clear them out? And then if the French have a couple units left, then they can do the same thing on their next turn. They can choose to move guys in, and then they can either not attack at all, or they could choose to attack. They also, if they think they have sufficient defensive strength there, they could choose to not move anybody in. And with the forces that are just sitting there, with nothing more moved in, they could choose to just sit on the defensive, or they could choose an attack with those. For example, a situation in which they might do that is if France moves in, nearly wipes out all of the German units. Maybe Germany has a couple guys left. Maybe Germany doesn't reinforce with anything, so the German force is extremely small and the French force is extremely large. France might not need to move anybody else in there. They might just take the units that they have and say, we're going to press the attack and just wipe out the Germans that way while they maneuver their existing armies elsewhere. So that is an example of land to land. This can also work in the case of an amphibious assault. So we're going to come down here to England and the British forces and the Ottomans here. So let's say that the British have a couple units in this Ottoman territory here. They either got there by land, or maybe they were dropped off via transport. Regardless, they are in that territory, and it is a contested territory. They can then decide If they have units that can get there by land, like in France, they can move them in, but they can also move units in by transport. Like right here, we've got a couple units here in Egypt to transport. England can say, well, I'm going to pick these guys up. I'm going to drop them off up there, just as if it had moved them in by land, and then it can decide, does it want to now attack with all of these units, or does it make more sense to just move them in to reinforce and then not attack, just to keep that territory strong from the British perspective, so that maybe the Ottomans aren't able to take it back as easily. So you can reinforce both by land as well as by sea, and in either case you get the option of just moving your guys in and letting them sit, or attacking. And even if you aren't reinforcing, you do get the opportunity to either sit or attack. That isn't dependent on you moving more forces in, but just because you moved reinforcements into a territory, that does not mean that you must then attack. You can just move them in and let them sit, if that makes more strategic sense. So that is how you reinforce. Any country can reinforce in this game. Now we're going to talk a little bit about neutrals. There are 3 types of neutrals. There are neutrals that lean a certain direction, and you'll see that they are colored just like a major power, like Belgium there, for example. And they have the flag, like a larger flag for that neutral country, and then also a small flag for the country that they align. So Belgium is aligned towards France, for example. But Holland, up here, is strict neutral. Holland, Denmark is the same. Switzerland over here is the same. There are a lot of strict neutrals, but if the neutral leans a direction, that's how you tell. So an example of another, or a couple more leaning neutrals, we have 3 of them here in the Balkans. We have Albania. We've got their flag and then a symbol for Italy. And then Serbia, we've got their marker and then a symbol for Russia. Bulgaria, same thing, but they align towards the Ottomans, and Romania aligns again towards Russia. So you have neutrals that align towards you, towards your side, neutrals that align towards your enemy, the opposing alliance, and then true neutrals. So let's say that in the case of Belgium, that'll be a good example, it is a neutral that aligns towards France. So what happens if the opposing alliance, in this case Germany, decides to invade it? So Germany's got some units up here. Let's say Germany decides to attack, as oftentimes they do early in the game. Well, because Belgium aligns with France, France is going to get to place some automatic units there. How many units is it going to get? Well, you're going to take the production value of the neutral. In this case, Belgium is worth 2, and double it. So for Belgium, you're going to get 4 units. One of those units is going to be an artillery, and the rest are infantry. And that's the way it is regardless. So in the case of Switzerland, which is a true neutral, and we'll get on rules for them here in a little bit, but if somebody invades Switzerland, its value is 1. So you're going to double it and get 2 units. 1 unit is an artillery. The other one is going to be an infantry then. A neutral that has more production, so let's say a Norway or a Sweden, is 4, so we double it and get 8. Again, 1 of those 8 will be an artillery, and the other 7 will be infantry. So what happens here in Belgium is, because Belgium aligns towards France, France automatically gets those 4 units to go there, and then a battle ensues. And if Germany takes it, Germany gets 2 production. But basically, it is free, a small group of free troops that France would get in that situation. If, let's say that Germany does not attack, we'll pretend like these guys were in Picardy, and let's say that Germany doesn't attack for some reason, then on its turn, Belgium is aligned towards France, so all France has to do is move some sort of military unit there. Even just 1 will do it, and then that activates the Belgian forces, and then they get added to whatever French forces are there in that territory. Oftentimes you will see that occurring down here, like in Romania or in Bulgaria. Usually Russia is able to move into Romania, though not always, and the Ottomans move into Bulgaria, neutrals that align towards them first before the enemy has a chance to invade. In the case of Belgium, usually Germany invades it before France gets the chance to go in. So down here, in the case of the Ottomans, Bulgaria is worth 3, so when they move just 1 unit into Bulgaria, they're going to get 5 infantry and 1 artillery for free. That represents the Belgian army. Now, if Russia were to invade Bulgaria, Bulgaria hasn't been activated yet, that means that the instant that Russia or any ally moves units into Bulgaria, those 5 infantry and 1 artillery pop up under Ottoman control to fight off the invaders. Now, it doesn't have to be like in the case of Bulgaria, it doesn't have to be the Ottomans that move in. It could be any central power. If somehow the Austro-Hungarians manage to get down here before the Ottomans do, they could move a unit into Bulgaria and activate it. Those bonus troops would still go to the Ottomans because Bulgaria is aligned towards the Ottomans specifically, but any ally could move in there. Or, I'm sorry, any ally of the Ottomans. So any other central power could move in there. In the case of Albania, that is aligned towards Italy. So Italy could use a transport and drop some guys off, and in that case it would get 1 artillery and 3 infantry. Or a country before Italy, maybe France, sweeps along here, drops off a guy in Albania to activate it, and then that gives Italy a couple bonus troops to use on its turn. So we've talked about neutrals that align one way or the other, and what happens if they align towards you and you move guys in there. What happens if they align towards the opposing alliance and you move guys in there. Now let's talk about the true neutrals. So Greece is an example of a true neutral. Any country that looks like that, as far as color, is a true neutral. They've got their flag, their marker, but they do not have the marker of any other major power. So we'll sweep across the board here really slowly. We've got Switzerland as another example. Spain over there. Holland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway. Just a few examples so you can see they're spread around the board and they have various production values. So in the case of a true neutral, neither side can move in and get bonus troops. If either side moves in, that neutral joins the opposing alliance. So let's say that Italy decides that it wants to invade Greece over here. It's pretty close. We've got a couple transports for this scenario. It drops off some guys. Now, Greece is worth 2, so again, we get 1 artillery and 3 infantry. But because it isn't aligned, the opposing alliance has to decide which countries will basically take control of the Greek army. So because of its close proximity to the Ottomans, they might agree, oh, it should be the Ottomans. But then maybe it makes sense for the Austro-Hungarians to be involved there. In the case of, let's say, Switzerland, like if, let's say that Germany invades Switzerland, the Allies might decide, okay, France, that's going to be an artillery and an infantry for France in Switzerland because of the geographic location. Sometimes it might be a little easier to decide. Sometimes it might be a little more difficult, but it's up to the side that neutral is joining. It's up to them to determine which one of those players is going to control that army. Which ally is going to basically be able to place its units there to represent that army, and then use those units, if they survive that round, going on into the future. So in this case, we might say that we're going to let the Ottomans control the Greek army. So then we would immediately place 3 infantry and 1 artillery that are the Ottomans in Greece that then the Ottomans get to use if they survive this battle. If there's any of them left after this round, they can then use them as they will. They can reinforce Greece with impunity. Greece is not going to get mad if the Ottomans move in after that point, because Greece is already in the war allied with the Central Powers. Now, if the Ottomans moved in, then it would be the opposite. The Allies would get to decide, okay, which one of us is going to be the Greek army. And they could choose any of them. They might choose Italy. I mean, Italy's close, but they could choose whoever they want. And then that country would put their units down, and then they can use those as they please. Now, one other thing, when it comes to neutrals, down here in Africa, we have various colonies. So Spain, for example, has Spanish Morocco up there. We also have Belgian Congo, and we have some Portuguese Angola, Portuguese East Africa. So we have some colonies down here. What happens if one of them are attacked? Does that neutral come in? Do bonus armies start popping up down here in Africa? And the answer to that question is no. Sometimes, historically, these nations would have colonial skirmishes, colonial wars with each other, but really, those are kind of considered on the periphery. Something like that is not going to bring a major power up here, their homeland, into the war. Something like that is not going to get the homeland to suddenly send a military force down here of size, or to try and quickly raise an army. So as far as the colonies go, both powers are able to move through these colonies and conquer them with impunity. They do not bring neutrals into the war. They do not add any additional forces to Africa running around. You can just gobble those up as you are able, as you see fit, with no negative repercussions, at least as far as neutrals go. So when you're thinking about a true neutral, like a Switzerland, for example, there could be certain benefits, either Germany or France moving in there and taking that because it widens the front between these countries, or maybe trying to outflank Italy from the north, or the Austrians, or whatever the case is. There can be advantages to taking on these neutrals, even if you have to fight off a few extra units. But there also can be disadvantages, because if you're fighting you're fighting units you wouldn't otherwise have to fight, and you might take some casualties that you didn't necessarily need to. So it's good to think carefully before invading a true neutral, though there might be a very good reason to do so. It might be to your advantage over the long run. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, as we talked about another aspect of the military in this game, Axis and Allies 1914, that of reinforcements, and then a little bit on how to gain other, maybe more strategic reinforcements by bringing neutrals into the war. If you typically in this game are going to want to try and activate neutrals that align towards you as quickly as possible, so you can take advantage of those extra armies, as well as a little bit of extra production for you. So, hope you all enjoyed this video and that you're having a great weekend.